Lexington Cemetery. This is one of the 3 most historic cemeteries in the state of Kentucky. A lot of very important historical figures are buried here. It's going to have a lot of interesting monuments. So we're going to go inside and check this place out.
Here's the historical marker, incorporated 1849. It's kind of laid out as a natural landscape park like many city cemeteries. This is the historic gatehouse. Very cool. The first tomb is the largest in the cemetery. This is the tomb of the great compromiser Henry Clay.
So Henry Clay is one of the most important figures in America's early political history after the Founding Fathers. He's known as the Great Compromiser because he led the Compromise of 1820, the 1837 Tariff Compromise, and the Compromise of 1850. He's known for, in terms of sectional issues, for preventing the Civil War from happening until after his death in 1852. He also supported his American system, which included high tariffs to promote American manufacturing and economic self-sufficiency, as well as providing government funds for improved infrastructure, especially to the west, where he lived here in Lexington. I do have a video at his home, his estate, in Lexington, so go check that out.
He died in DC in 1852. He was the first person to lie in state in the Capitol Rotunda. Up on top of this over 80-foot column is a statue of him. There's a plaque there on Henry Clay. And this is a walk-in mausoleum. Unfortunately, it's locked, so I can't go in. But there, his body lies inside that sarcophagus. This is very cool. This is probably one of the most impressive graves in the entire United States, dedicated to just one person. I believe that's his wife, Lucretia, buried over there. I can't get over how awesome of a monument this is. Wow, this tree behind Henry Clay's tomb was alive when the Constitution was signed and ratified in 1787. This is the back door of Henry Clay's tomb. I guess he's inside the other wall there. Looks like someone else might be buried back here. You can see the back of the Henry Clay monument right there. That's a big old monument right there. The Castlemans. It's a very old grave. I gotta say, this is a really beautiful cemetery. This is quite an unusual monument, like a pyramid. Clearly very old. Looks like the Pindells. Wow, look at this Victorian monument. It's got like a spire on it. Been on a mission to see the graves of all the presidents and vice presidents. And here is one of the VPs. This here is the grave of the traitor Vice President John C. Breckinridge, who was James Buchanan's VP. He did win his election for Congress in 1860. But he got kicked out because he supported the Confederacy, and then he became an officer in the Confederate Army. The Breckinridges were a pretty prominent family here. This statue until last year was in downtown Lexington. It has been removed because, I mean, he's not a good guy. He's a traitor, like a literal traitor who supports slavery. So right here is another interesting family. This is the grave of Confederate General John Hunts Morgan of Lexington. Initially, he was a pretty effective leader. He did a lot of skirmishing and raiding around Kentucky, and in 1863 he led a raid into Indiana, through southern Indiana, and in through southern Ohio, kind of following like 30 or 40 miles north of the Ohio River. But he did get caught and he was jailed. He did manage to escape the Union prison he was imprisoned at in a matter of months. But after that, and his raid was a failure. There wasn't any like strategic gain from it. So after that, most Confederates didn't really care for him or respect him too much. So he got pretty minor rules. But on September 4th, 1864, his regiment was surprised by Union troops in Greenville, Tennessee, and he got shot in the back and killed.
So as a Hoosier, gotta say, I don't like this guy very much. Don't invade Indiana. And also just don't be a Confederate. That's some good advice for you.
The general does get left a lot of Confederate mementos. Joel Higgins. Here's an interesting monument. What's sad about a lot of old gravestones is that pieces will fall off. See, this is supposed to be on top of there, and then graves will fall like that. This is the Todd family plot. This is the family that produced Mary Todd Lincoln, the wife of President Abraham Lincoln. So Robert Todd here was her father. You notice their son, Abraham Lincoln, and Mary's son, Robert Todd Lincoln, the only one to survive, was named after him. And this is the grave of her mother, Eliza Todd. She died when Mary was 6 years old due to childbirth, like many women back at that time did. And that was the first of many deaths in Mary's life that would traumatize her. Someone left a penny. And the big monument here is for Elizabeth Todd, Mary Todd's stepmother, whom Robert married soon after Eliza's death. And from my understanding, Mary was not too fond of Elizabeth. On the side, it says, "In memory of my boys, Samuel B. Todd, David H. Todd, and Alexander H. Todd, all Confederate soldiers." These would have been the stepbrothers of Mary Todd Lincoln, who was First Lady of the United States during the Civil War. There's some other Todd family members. They were a very prominent family here in Lexington. Robert Todd served in the Kentucky House of Representatives. This is Lyman Beecher Todd, who was a doctor. So this cemetery was formed during the cholera outbreak that killed many people here in Lexington. And this is the grave of William King Solomon, who's known as the hero of the 1833 cholera outbreak. So he was actually the town drunk But during the cholera outbreak, he stayed and dug graves. So people consider him a hero. And some of these graves over here are probably cholera victims. That's a big obelisk. I like it when graves have stone-carved monuments like this. Our sorrows are but fleeting shadows, the faith and hope of life everlasting, like the ocean is eternal. Here's a very interesting grave marker for the Ackermans. It says, "The world was their classroom." And their gravestone is a globe. I've seen a globe gravestone before, but not this size. This is very impressive, and I agree with their sentiments. So that was the Lexington Cemetery. Very cool cemetery. Definitely ranks up with Cave Hill and Frankfort cemeteries here in Kentucky. Some very interesting people buried here. Always love exploring old cemeteries like this. If you like this video, I have other videos at some interesting cemeteries, as well as at roadside attractions, museums related to some of the people whose graves I saw here, and much more. So please check those out and subscribe. Thanks for watching.